Hey guys, it's Vince. Today I'm on the workbench and I'm working on a client's cable, and I want to discuss some things that keep coming up. No matter how many times I seem to cover them, I get a lot of the most basic questions in terms of how to do soldering on these connectors, regardless of what type of connector it is. Where do my grounds go on the actual spindle connector in terms of which end do I actually ground and also ground the shield drain to? What you see here is a large HY connector, and you can see right there, you can see how this was soldered. And again, this is using Kester 186 flux. I don't have the label on the bottle. I don't use the labels for myself, but that's Kester 186 flux. It's RMA flux. And then Kester number 44 solder. Got that right there. And you can see exactly how that connector looks. Okay, there's no burn marks. All the casing is lined up. Now this is my new Rev 3 16.4. You can see the 16 gauge, the MBR ratings on the cable, 8 times the diameter, 105 degrees Celsius rated 300 volt cable. Now just to clarify, when it says 300 volts, because I get questions on this a lot, each lead is rated to 300 volts. The casing is also rated to 300 volts. So for our application, this is plenty, okay? The beauty of it is the thickness of the cable. But what I want to cover is when we look at how this cable is assembled, okay? You guys really got to pay attention to which end of the cable would actually have a ground due to the fact that it's logical. And when I say logical, the spindles, we all know, or should all know by now, that the spindles coming from overseas are usually not grounded on the fourth pin. It's been covered numerous times, but it's something that does come up a lot. And guys seem shocked still when they buy a spindle from overseas and they say, well, why isn't this spindle grounded? I don't understand it. You know, whoever built the spindle didn't do it right. No, actually they did build it right. The question is, do you understand what you're looking at? And when I say that, the spindles aren't grounded on the fourth pin because the manufacturer expects you to ground your CNC chassis, which you should be doing anyways, which in turn will ground your spindle because the casing on the spindle is conductive. It's stainless steel usually. So if you purchase a 2.2K spindle, it's going to typically have a stainless outer body, which will once again be conductive when you mount it to your Z-axis, as long as your Z-axis frame is made out of the proper metal material. You should not be using a wood-framed CNC. If you are, and you decide to upgrade to a real spindle, I don't know why you would do that before upgrading your frame, but if you decided to, keep that in mind. Then yes, you will have to ground that spindle as an isolated component. Okay, but do not be in panic mode when you look and you say, oh my God, my spindle's not grounded. Your spindle is not grounded once again because the manufacturer expects you to ground the CNC chassis as a whole unit. Okay, now that being said, when you take this connector and you plug this into your spindle, you can see there's the yellow-green ground lead right here. It's going in on the bottom of the actual connector. When this goes in to your actual spindle and plugs in, you see no shield drain sticking or protruding out of this casing. And the reason you don't is because the shield drain goes on the opposite end of the cable where the cable is terminated to meet the VFD. Now, why do I do that? Let me just grab this and I'll get this real quick. Cover this real quick. Here's our boot. You can see the deoxit on the terminals. You can see that gold tint. These have been polished and then they're hit with deoxit. You can see here we've got the green stripe with the yellow lead, and also the silicone ground drain is going to the VFD's ground. And the reason we do that again is because we are grounding it on the VFD end. I get asked this question all the time. Which end of the cable do I ground? You're going to ground it on the VFD end. Now, this way is bulletproof. I have right now about, I'd say about 200-300 cables out on the market with one single ground, and I've never had anyone say anything. They've never had a problem because these cables are double shielded as they should be. They're grounded properly, and again, very, very simple process. You see the ground here of the actual cable, and then we see the silicone ground drain, and then this goes over right to your VFD. on the ground terminal. It'll usually be number 9 on an HY. Many of the VFDs are the same. You also notice that it's allocated to the, when you're looking at the cable, it's allocated to the right side. And then these 3 leads are all power. Okay? The other thing I get asked all the time, I have a 110 volt spindle. I only need a 3-lead cable. No, you don't. No, you don't. And the reason you don't is because what you don't understand is that, yes, the spindle is rated to 110 volts. However, they're talking about the VFD that's powering the spindle. What the spindle is actually running is single phase in actual 3-lead power in, so it's 3-phase power going into the spindle. So each one of these leads will still be allocated to that spindle. And if you don't believe me, test it. You can test it on your VFD and see exactly what I'm saying to you. You will have 3 leads going to your spindle. That means your 4th lead is going to be your ground. So you need a 4-lead cable. You do not want to use an 18-4 cable. 18 gauge cable does not have enough support for the amps that spindles can pull. So you'll want to use 16 gauge cable. But rest assured, even on my more economical standard double shielded cable, the 16-4, you can see this Rev 3 is very, very nice stuff in terms of the size. So again, it's very easy to work with. It's again going to be much more advanced than single shielded cable in terms of you assembling it. If you're not comfortable with that, I highly recommend you reaching out to me and we can go over some things, because I'm going to tell you right now, and believe me, I still make mistakes. You definitely want to take into account these cables take skill to build. Okay? It's taken me years to get this good. It's not something that I do and, I just do once in a while. This is an everyday thing. So if you're doing one cable and you think you've never built a cable like this, rest assured, you're most likely going to have questions. And that's why I'm doing these videos, to eliminate those questions. Okay? Because you can go on the forums, and I've said this before, and search and search and search and hope that people will reply to you. And then the people that do reply to you, you haven't seen their work, you haven't seen their system. You need to know what you're dealing with 3-phase power in, because this will easily start a fire. All connections are soldered. All ring connectors, once again, are used, because we don't use crimp connectors because they cannot pull out. We don't use fork connectors because they can pull out. So again, unless this cable is, in terms of tensily, pulled on and actually destroyed, these connectors will not release. This is the safest way to assure yourself safe operation in your shop or your home. Okay? So I get those questions all the time. So remember, you guys out there running 110 volt because it's convenient to plug into your wall outlet, make sure you understand that you still have a 3-phase spindle that will require 3 power leads and a ground. And that ground will also turn into a shield drain. Therefore, you need 16-4 double shielded cable and you're set. Okay? The other thing to keep in mind, for the guys out there who buy the VFDs and go, well, the VFD needs to be, powered too, and I see guys running, weird cables in terms of leaving the unit always on. That's not best practice. You wouldn't leave your faucet on when you leave your house. So in best practice, you would connect the VFD to a wall outlet with a substantial breaker on it that will support the unit, and you'll be able to cycle it on and off with a wall switch. That is best practice. If you hire an electrician, and I've been told this many times, and they do not know what they're looking at in terms of the equipment you're working with, find another electrician or contact a more specialist in niche. Once again, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to the vendor you purchase from, because if they are not willing to help you, you need to reevaluate who you purchase from. Okay? I get a lot of third-party questions where they'll go to somebody, a vendor, purchase something, and then try to come to me to get support. That will not occur. If you didn't buy from me, I only support my own hardware unless you pay me for a consultation. This is no different than you would work for somebody else and expect to not be paid. It would not make sense, especially if you're not being supported. We have to look at this from what we're actually trying to accomplish. This is a safety thing, and it's something that proves who you should be purchasing from in terms of their knowledge of what they're actually selling. This is very, very serious electronic equipment that can be very deadly in the wrong hands, and it needs to be really looked at carefully. If you notice you're purchasing from a vendor that does not have the required cable for the unit you're working with, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. When the vendor's selling 800 different types of stepper drives or servo drives, but doesn't carry the correct cable for what you're actually wiring, does that make any logical sense? So think about these things. Think about it in terms of your safety. Think about it in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. I work with many different people every day, and I get told, oh, hey, I'm an engineer, hey, I'm this, hey, I'm that, hey, I'm this, hey, I'm that. And when it comes down to it, do they have experience building and working with this type of electronics? You can go to a doctor, doesn't mean he's a podiatrist. You can go to a doctor, general practitioner, doesn't mean he's a cardiologist. If you don't have a specialist in this field who understands what's going on, those titles mean nothing. Most of the time they mean nothing, because they're going to say, well, how do I do this? I don't know where to go. You know, how do I solder a connector like this? And I get asked this all the time. How do I, I've soldered connectors for radio control, I've soldered for things. When you start talking about soldering, close quarter soldering, and then we're soldering the actual cups, we're not burning any of the leads, everything has to look symmetrical, or at least be symmetrical enough to close the cable up, you'll find out what you're dealing with. Here we go. So you can see exactly what we have there. And I hope I've answered a lot of your questions, because again, these questions come up every day, and I know why it's coming up so much is that we are seeing a lot more people entering the genre because they're realizing, yes, this is a very profitable industry, but there is a lot to learn, And it's not just, plug in the system like many guys on YouTube show you and move their system around, create rapids, and then they're cutting out cool parts. They're not showing you all the headaches that they went through to learn that. So keep that in mind. What you're seeing now, this is where you need to be to get to that level. And that's why I say it's all a learning curve, everything. So I hope you guys are watching the videos to the end, because there's a lot of information in them. And again, if it saves one of you, I've done my job. It's made you think, it's made you realize that, yeah, this is serious stuff. I want to make sure I do it right. That's why these cables are not cheap. That's why I charge what I do for my cables, because you can see the results for yourself. When I hear guys saying, they message me, your results on the forums are amazing. I hear everybody talking about you. Look, that to me is, I've earned that. I've earned that through the years of experience that I've put into, providing you guys products that I would use myself. If I wouldn't use it myself, I won't supply it, period. And I hope other vendors think the same, but that's what I feel. So again, guys, if you have questions, require quotes or consultations, message me direct at storm2313@gmail.com. You can also message me direct through my eBay store. You'll see links in the beginning of the video and at the end. I thank you all for your support. To my subscribers, I love you guys. Take care.